This is the Inside the Chapters podcast for the novel When I See the Wolf Ride, Book 1, in which we'll review the origins of the story, its characters, and the symbolism embedded in this chapter. Now, here's your host, Michele Jaco.
Hello, and welcome to our Inside the Chapters podcast for the new novel When I See the Wolf Ride, Book 1. I'm here with the book's author, Jeff Neal.
Hi, everybody.
About every week or so, we're going to release one of these free podcasts along with new chapters for you to read. In the podcast, we'll discuss the story, but more importantly, the spiritual themes and questions raised in the chapter. Chapter 13 is called Go to the Cross. After a time of healing and recovery, reality sets in for everyone. A lot of your life is defined by how you interact with the people God puts in your path. Coit has wonderful new relationships. Wolf's family and fiancé are clearly smitten with him, and DJ believes he is truly his son. But Coit also finds himself without a job and sleeping on Captain Avigdor's couch while he figures out what to do with his life. Captain Avigdor gets him started by telling Coit that when he's healed, he has a new job offer to work in law enforcement. Because of Coit's heroism in Vietnam, he's given an apartment, some spending money, and the use of the captain's truck. After finding out that DJ's chances of getting adopted are not good, Coit takes him out, buying him clothes and food. It's all good until Coit leaves him all week and through the weekend.
Somehow DJ can sense that he's on the verge of being dumped by this man he loves. Rejection from somebody you love so much is one of the most painful emotions humans experience. Imagine experiencing it when you're a small child, all alone in the world. Coit justifies leaving DJ for the weekend because he has his own life to figure out. He loves DJ, but the idea of fatherhood is so limiting. Coit has never enjoyed a social life. It was taking care of mom, losing everything, and then off to the army. And now he needs a break just to figure out his situation. Is he going to adopt this little kid? Is there something special there with Elizabeth? A weekend trip to see the new loved ones that affectionately call him Leahy seems the best medicine he can conceive.
Before the weekend comes, he accepts a job with the Texas Rangers, and he ends up on a mission his very first day.
When writing fiction, you try to get as many things as you can in the real world right. The Texas Rangers have the reputation of being one of the most elite law enforcement agencies in the country. You have to have at least 8 years of experience in law enforcement to even be considered as a Texas Ranger, so there was no way this group of young soldiers would ever be accepted as Rangers. But the Rangers do work in a lot of areas, and one of them is investigations. So I believed it would be possible that they could be associated with a group of elite young soldiers who might work undercover for them, gathering evidence in the drug rings, because most of the people doing these crimes at this time were younger. Coit's first mission with the captain is fiction, based on an actual incident in Southlake, Texas in the 70s, where a prison escapee held a family hostage in a car. The Texas Rangers handled it and eventually took out the criminal and saved the family. There was evidence that the criminal was from Rome, Texas. So I made up an adventure for Coit to get his first taste of evil criminals in the U.S. right there. He also gets to watch the captain athletically take out the criminals and arrest them.
Well, Coit is feeling great after the mission. Nobody died, and they saved a group of innocent people from human traffickers. Wow. So even though he has a nasty dog bite, Coit considers it to be a nice victory. But he seems surprised when Elizabeth is so angry with him.
After he visits her, even after he explains what happened and why he couldn't call, she is really upset. And then there is this exchange.
I'm sorry, but they put your life in danger on your very first week.
Part of the job, she gritted her teeth.
I hate the job.
Look, I have to work, and I was lucky to get this.
I know all that.
Ouch! What's going on here? Coit can't figure out what he did wrong. She loves me, now she loves me not. I think a lot of guys coming to this part honestly ask, what gives? This is a conversation that many husbands and wives have. It's especially hard for many first responders, firemen, police, soldiers, doctors, and others who serve. These jobs demand so much of those who agree to take them on. Longer hours, days, weeks away from the family, sometimes risk to life and limb. When your job is so overwhelming, it's difficult to see things from the viewpoint of those who care about you. Coit is on a high from having had a successful mission, but Elizabeth didn't experience any of that. When Coit tells her about it, her first thought isn't how great the team did. It's more like, oh, I nearly lost you too. Michele, you did a great job of portraying Elizabeth in this chapter. For some people listening to this, they may feel she's being unfair to Leahy. Could you relate to her and her attitude toward this?
Oh, I certainly could. Boy, where to begin? And by the way, thank you very much. What an honor it was to portray Elizabeth. And I really feel like I got into her shoes and what she was feeling. So Coit has recovered from his physical wounds, but Elizabeth is still suffering from her emotional ones. She's grieving the loss of her beloved fiancé, and that's not going to just be over in a month's or even a year's time. Sometimes divorce can even feel like a sort of death and has a grieving process too. Going through a dark period of your life, like a death, like divorce, the open emotional wounds are there, and the memories can be so strong, they honestly threaten to overwhelm even your faith in God. I've been there. You don't want to talk about it. You don't want to remember it. You just want to escape it.
Yeah.
So, like I said, I put myself in Elizabeth's shoes. Okay, so she's only known Leahy for a few weeks. She's still trying to figure out what her life will look like after Wea's death. And now she meets Leahy and is falling for him. But she's scared and having trouble imagining that her life will ever be anything but one of mourning. She's fearful, and some of her words do reflect that.
Well, when you're in a relationship, or you believe you are, the words, "Don't think I can't live without you," burn pretty bad. I know, I've heard them. Leahy needs some of Degataga's wisdom now, and as usual, Degataga doesn't disappoint. The old man lived through this too as a lineman. He made good money, but a lot of the time it was working in thunderstorms or dangerous conditions. He quit the job when he had to bring a young man down off a pole after the kid was electrocuted. Degataga's profession was my dad's profession in real life. I would watch him leave in thunderstorms to go out and restore the power. He was never afraid, but Mom and I were. By the way, Degataga's story of the young man who was electrocuted on the pole was true, but it was my dad, Coit Neal, who pulled the kid down off the pole. I'll never forget the look on his face when he came home that night. I would wager he never forgot that night either. But Dad didn't quit being a lineman until he was diagnosed with cancer. They gave him 3 months to live. He lived 18. So for me, the stories involving linemen and cancer are very personal and still painful.
There are always two sides to everything like this. If your dad didn't go out to work on the poles, power would never be restored. If Leahy doesn't go after the criminals with the captain, all of those people they saved would still be modern slaves. To many, jobs like these are a calling. But there's only so much time in your life. If family takes too much, you may not be good at your job. If the job takes too much, you may damage your family. So, Jeff, what does the Bible say about balancing work and family?
Well, Michele, I can't really find a scripture that addresses that specifically. It does appear that God cares about our time and admonishes us not to waste it on unimportant things. This is from 2 Corinthians chapter 10, verses 5 through 6. It says, "The tools of our trade aren't for marketing or manipulation, but they are for demolishing that entire massively corrupt culture. We use our powerful God tools for smashing warped philosophies, tearing down barriers erected against the truth of God, fitting every loose thought and emotion and impulse into the structure of life shaped by Christ. Our tools are ready at hand for clearing the ground of every obstruction and building lives of obedience into maturity." That's from the Message version. One author referred to this as redeeming the time. And there's this quote, "There is no command to balance our time, but rather to redeem all of it, putting all of it to the best use." That's from Dr. Ryan C. McPherson, who was the founding president of the Havaster Project. So redeeming the time will take some discernment and wisdom.
All of this is interrupted by the terrible news that DJ has run away, and there's a storm coming.
Leahy or Coit doesn't realize it yet, but he's had an epiphany today. When he hears the news, he's panicked at the idea of the little boy being in jeopardy again, just as an actual father would be. If you haven't gotten my hints yet, let me say that Degataga is the wise father that Coit never had. And before Leahy rushes off to save the day, he needs some wisdom. Degataga tells him, "You do your best work in storms." This is God's answer to the continuing question of, am I really chosen for this? Am I good enough? Coit's work in the last 2 Vietnam chapters has prepared him for this moment. Then Degataga tells him this, "Look to the cross, son, go to the cross." In Vietnam, DJ's orphanage home had a cross, and he was very excited when he saw the cross on Degataga's house. For the boy, it was a connection to home, a place of refuge and safety. So it makes sense that DJ would escape to a place with a cross. But the symbolism I wanted to communicate here is greater than that. For Coit, the message is that you should start by looking to God. Jesus' sacrifice on the cross saved you, so the cross is a reminder of the power from Jesus you have with you when you go into a dangerous situation. And this is a dangerous situation.
When Coit gets to the school, the storm is raging and DJ is missing. He's been told he should go to the cross, but there are crosses everywhere, so which one is the right one? Coit eventually realizes it's the one at the very top of the hill, the one at the highest place, the one on the water tower that, of course, is the most difficult to get to.
Michele, many times to do what God has called you to do, to allow him to use you to save the innocent, you got to attempt the most difficult task. Moses had to face down Pharaoh. David had to face down Goliath. Jesus had to face the cross. So Coit runs up the hill, climbs over the fence, and finally makes it to DJ. But it turns out that was the easy part. I could barely see. He was under the water tower, sitting in the driving rain, huddled on his knees, as if in a position of prayer. I ran to him. "DJ, we've got to get out of here. There's a tornado coming."
No, you lie. You lied to Doug. You said you would be dead. I said I love you. You never said it back. You lie. You don't love me. You don't want me. Nobody wants Doug. So what if I die? Nobody care about Doug.
How can Coit possibly save this little boy now? He only has moments before the storm takes them. His only choice, his only chance, is to pour out his heart. So he tells DJ he loves him and gives him the amulet that Wolf had been given originally. Now, for the first time since coming to America, Coit has honestly declared from his heart that he intends to be DJ's father. And finally, DJ can tell. As the storm is upon them, Coit uses his body to protect DJ, laying on top of the boy to shield him from flying debris. DJ looks up at Coit, now without fear, because he knows he's looking at the Father who loves him. The symbolism of the tower being destroyed and only the cross left intact is pretty obvious. DJ and Coit have survived because they went to the cross, which represents the power of Jesus Christ. And the cross remains intact no matter what the storm is, because the power of God is stronger than any storm. It is eternal and it is unending.
After the storm, Coit thinks about God. He tells us, "The God who hated me in high school now smiled down upon me." Did he change or did I? So, Jeff, how do you answer this?
This is an interesting question that has been pondered through the ages, actually. If things are going badly, God must hate me. Now that things are going good, God must like me. But the scriptures don't give us that. This is from Malachi chapter 3, verse 6. I, the Lord, do not change. And this is from Hebrews 13, verse 8. Jesus Christ is the same yesterday, today, and forever. Scripture tells us that God does not change. In fact, he loves us and always has. He does allow us to learn through hard times and crisis. The lesson is to look to him. Coit is learning that lesson, but he's slow. He has, however, seen God work some pretty incredible miracles, to the point that he now considers his life heaven, especially compared to the hell of Vietnam. We can't really know what heaven is like. Scripture gives us some clues, allegories of streets of gold, never-ending light, and beautiful sounds. But heaven on earth can truly be described in terms of relationships with friends, family, and with God. Coit can appreciate this more than most because Lee Dunham was starved for love after his mom passed and became a depressed, angry man. But that man truly died in Vietnam. And just as it is described of baptism, Coit, the new creature, has a new life. It is a life based on loving relationships. The new creature is different, at least partially, because he knows he is loved.
If you're a Christian who doesn't feel anything in your faith, I hope you'll consider Coit's story. Coit learned to love others because they loved him. DJ, Degataga, Awanasa, and to an extent, Elizabeth. But most of all, God. God brought Coit to this new life out of Vietnam, where he should not have survived. He brought Coit and DJ through a tornado. Although Coit can't really perceive it yet, he knows somewhere deep down that God really does love him, and God didn't change. God's love changed Coit. I know it changed me. I went through a couple of big life things right back to back where I concluded that my prayers were falling on deaf ears. But eventually they were answered, just in a much different way than expected, and turns out much better too. So now I'm a firm believer that no matter the situation, once you finally grasp God's love for you, and it can take something monumental to realize that love, but once you see it, God's love can change you.
Yeah.
So, Jeff, before we close this episode, can you give us a preview of the next chapter?
Well, Coit will try to reconcile with Elizabeth. Andy starts training under the Texas Rangers, so I hope you like it.
Well, as always, the next chapter will be available free for you to read in the PDF or listen to as an audio production. And we'll have a new podcast available in which we'll discuss Chapter 14 in detail. So until next time, I'm Michele Jaco, that's Jeff Neal, and we hope you'll check out Chapter 14 and our next podcast.
See you next time, TGBTG.
Thanks for listening to our podcast. We hope you'll check out our podcast for Chapter 14, which will be released along with the release of Chapter 14 of the novel. We welcome any comments, questions, or suggestions you might have. You can contact Michele or Jeff at our website, whenISeeTheWolfRide.com.